they did rule just a day after hearing arguments. Marky?
Yeah, huge day ahead. Evan Lambert, thank you so much. Let's dig even deeper into this one with Democratic strategist Max Burns, Republican strategist Rina Shah, and then Colby Hall, News Nation media analyst. Max, let me just start with you here. Put all of this into perspective for us. How consequential is today, not only for November and 2024, but the landscape of future presidential elections and races moving forward?
Well, this is huge, not just right now, but over the long term. We know from the 14th Amendment that this is something that can legally be done. We know it's been done before. So there's not really a question of whether it's possible. The question the Supreme Court has to answer is whether Donald Trump actually committed an insurrection and that these states decided this properly. That is going to be a huge impact because, I mean, I know we live in some crazy times here, but it is never a good thing for a candidate to be in front of the Supreme Court arguing that they didn't try to overthrow the government. I mean, this is a case Donald Trump is not going to be able to outrun, and his lawyers have tried to have it both ways, essentially saying he didn't commit insurrection, but even if he did, it's protected by his presidential immunity. And I'm just not sure how the Supreme Court's going to bite on that argument.
Yeah. You know, Rina, this is obviously a conservative majority court. 3 of these justices appointed by President Trump himself. He reportedly has said in private, you know, he thinks that this Supreme Court will rule in his favor, but he is worried that they could, you know, rule against him as to not seem too political. Do you think this case is about to get a fair shake, Rina?
I absolutely think this case is going to be done in just the way that we would expect our highest court in the land to look at it. And look, we can talk all we want about some justices being more conservative than others, but let's not forget Kavanaugh, for example, whose confirmation hearing I followed very closely, is very much an originalist. So what's he going to take a look at this and say? Is that Section 3 of the 14th Amendment is very clear that what Trump did on the morning of January 6, 2021 was incite an insurrection. So there's this judicial interpretation, which is the phrase of the day, of the week, almost of the year, that really is what we Americans have to trust in. We have to trust these justices to look at the law and see how it applies to this former president. Just this week, we learned from a federal circuit court that they don't find him to have that shield of presidential immunity apply to him after he walked out the White House doors. So to me, Section 3 of the 14th Amendment is very clear in many ways. It becomes a situation, though, that we have to, again, look at how much trust has eroded within the electorate for our judiciary, as well as how hyper-partisan we are. That is what changes the messaging around how the court will treat this.
Yeah, and to piggyback off what you're saying, Rina, you know, Colby, as she's mentioning, the case hinges on the 14th Amendment, but there are a lot more questions that these justices will have to grapple with in the days and the weeks to come. Colby, what lines of questioning do you expect them to dig into outside of this insurrection clause?
Well, I think, you know, the million-dollar question is the definition of insurrection, right? The 14th Amendment was created following the Civil War, where there was clearly Confederate Army that was treasonous and trying to secede from the Union. President Trump would argue, and his lawyers would argue, that he told the protesters to march peacefully to the Capitol, but he also tweeted beforehand that it would be wild on January 6th, calling on his supporters to go there. So, you know, the highest court is there to sort of adjudicate the definitions of subjective terms like, what is an insurrection? I do find it interesting that there is conservative makeup of the Supreme Court who have long argued for states' rights. And this is, you know, at its core, a states' rights issue. And even Neil Gorsuch, who was appointed by Trump, he argued in 2012 that Colorado has the ability to decide who can be on their presidential ballot. So I expect them to keep Trump on the ballot, but it will be fascinating to hear how Gorsuch and other conservative justices explain why they believe so.
Yeah, I mean, my team and I were talking this morning. It's been wild just to see how many different interpretations of this there have been from constitutional attorneys, across the country. Max, who do you have your eye on in terms of justices? Do you expect any of them to break from political expectations here?
I think that would be really shocking to me. I think the more interesting things we likely won't hear for years, which is how John Roberts internally handled this case. This is something the Roberts Court has wanted to stay away from. It is not excited to be in this position. But I do think that at the end of the day, as Colby mentioned, these justices will do their jobs.
And Rina, we've seen these legal cases play out where the former president shows up. He gaggles with the media. Are we expecting Donald Trump to show up at all in the days or weeks to come to the Supreme Court for this one?
Well, the former president is very unpredictable. We know that, but we also know that in his having the bully pulpit for 4 years, and in the 4 years since he's left the White House, it's almost as though he's never given up that podium. He takes to any audience and makes his point, and it's heard around the world almost. But there are two things about this case, Margie, and I actually have a personal experience. In 2016, I was the first elected RNC delegate to buck the presumptive nominee at the time who became the president, former President Donald Trump. And I did that. And then a group of delegates from Colorado also did that. So this case coming out of Colorado was brought by a Republican, a woman in the twilight years of her life. And I just have always known that Colorado Republicans are capable of this. They're very independently minded. There's a lot been made of New Hampshire Republicans being independently minded. This group of Colorado Republicans who have been going up against the former president since he was a nominee, like I did in early 2016. This is what they've brought. And their Supreme Court said they wanted to see this happen, and now the highest court has it. It's all very, very fascinating. It's political theater at its finest, but we are a nation of laws, and so I am looking forward to this ruling.
Yeah, it's certainly unprecedented. Colby, I'll give you the last word. And also, are we expecting a final verdict or ruling soon, considering that Colorado's primary is on Super Tuesday?
Well, they've had to send the ballots to the printer already, so I do think that soon is a weird term with the Supreme Court. They don't usually work with alacrity, but in this issue, I think they do. I think they see that there is some urgency around sort of resolving this, and I think, whether we see some more of the progressive judges sort of fall in line with saying yes, he needs to be on the ballot. You're hearing a lot of Democratic sort of pundits saying yes, he should be on the ballot. But I think they're going to signal this is just the first of many Trump-related cases that the Supreme Court is going to hear. So I think what will be most interesting is how they signal they're going to deal with these issues that, as Max said, John Roberts hates being in this situation, but here we are. So it'll be a fascinating day to follow for sure.
Yeah, the court that likes to stay out of politics is about to find itself in the middle of it. Max Burns, Rina Shah, Colby Hall, thank you all so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Want to head to breaking news now. We're just now learning